Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker podcast. I'm joined once again by a very special guest to talk about the NC State Wolfpack women's basketball team. Nationally renowned basketball broadcaster, former Wolfpacker herself, Debbie Antonelli, is joining the Wolfpacker podcast to talk the Sweet 16 for the Wolfpack. NC State clinches its third straight Sweet 16 appearance. It ties a program record. Let's see if they can advance past the Sweet 16. The last two times they've been knocked out in the Sweet 16, but they could advance to just their second Elite Eight appearance in school history with a win over Indiana on Saturday. Before we dive in, Debbie, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Plus, you can watch this on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give this video a thumbs up. So let's jump right into it, Debbie. First of all, I think the big elephant in the room is Kayla Jones's injury in the first round. She goes out in the first half of the North Carolina A&T win. NC State is able to control that game, move on to the second round pretty easily with the second half. Win by 21 points against the Aggies. Then they move on to play a physical South Florida team in the second round, a team that won the American Athletic Conference regular season and conference tournament, maybe an underseeded Bulls team in that. Handled them as well with a double-digit victory without Kayla Jones. All five NC State starters finish in double-figure scoring. So, Debbie, do you think this NC State team can still get to the Final Four with or without Kayla Jones? Obviously, you want her, but can they still move on to their ultimate goal without one of their star players?
That's the big elephant in the room. You're absolutely correct, Justin. You want to see all teams at full strength when you get to this point for how hard all these teams have worked to get here. And what a great reward it is, particularly under the difficult circumstances and adversity that everyone has faced. It's a bummer. It's a big bummer whether she can go, and if she can go, even if she's at 75%, is that going to factor in whether Wes wants to play her or not? That is troubling. There's no question. Full strength, NC State is one of the best teams in the country. They can win the whole thing. Does that mean that they can't win it? No, that doesn't mean that at all. It means that there's something special about this team anyway. And certainly Jada Boyd is more than capable, has been a sixth starter, if you will, all season long. Wes has referred to her that way. And, the COVID protocol timing of Cunane being out allowed Camille Hobby to get some extra minutes and some quality time on the floor. Not mop-up time, but really important quality minutes. And you see that Wes has had to dig a little bit deeper, and they're delivering. So when you look at all of that, you go, okay, of course Wes is the coach of the year in women's game. He had the two biggest wins, even though he hasn't played his bench a lot because, it's hard to get minutes or take minutes away from some of the players that are starters. The bench is ready. So for NC State fans out there watching and listening, you got to be proud of those kids that when their number's called, they're ready to go. And that's a good sign of culture and coaching and preparation and paying attention in the scout and knowing that their role is very valuable in practice, even though they didn't get to highlight it on the floor. Now it's different. Now you get to play. And so, I always say it's bad karma for players to be complaining about complaining about playing time. Because when you complain about playing time, your number's called, you better be able to deliver. And they have. So, Cunane is still the focal point. She's the axis. They got to play through her. I think, Reina Perez has been unbelievably talented and such the perfect piece at the right time. And I have a lot of confidence in Wes and the team being prepared. Indiana is good. They were picked preseason to win the Big Ten. Of course, Maryland has dominated that league since Maryland left the ACC. It's not going to be easy, but it's certainly a game that is not a team that's highly athletic or a team that's better than NC State on the glass. They do have outstanding guard play, which is important in March. But I know I'm giving you one big run-on answer here, Justin, but there's a lot of things to take apart or break apart here. So fire away.
No, well, I completely agree with you. You mentioned Jada Boyd, and kind of my takeaway with the Kayla Jones injury. Obviously, some of her intangibles. She's the leader of this team. She's the vocal engine of this team. It seems like sometimes NC State doesn't even get going until Kayla Jones gets her and one, and then she screams under the bucket and gets, the players and the bench riled up. And you can't replace that. There's no replacing that. However, from just an output standpoint, I don't think the starting five really misses a beat because Jada Boyd is so athletic and talented. She slips right into Jones's role perfectly. The only reason she's a sixth man on this team is because Kayla Jones is a senior and that vocal leader. She'd be starting on pretty much any other team in the country, and she's averaged 18 points in both of her first two rounds. The problem I think that NC State's going to run into is the depth situation. You look at their bench points in the first two rounds. They had 33 bench points in the first round against North Carolina A&T. Granted, I know they benched some of their starters a little bit more than they would in a normal round, but it's still quite a bit of output from that NC State bench. In the second game, I believe they only had 7 points. Comes from Genesis Bryant, Ellie Sutphin, and Camille Hobby. 3 players other than Camille Hobby, who's been a regular reserve. Genesis Bryant and Ellie Sutphin haven't really played that much this year. So, in your experience, Debbie, how important is it to have depth once you get to this point in March? Because obviously it's something you want, but is it something that you really need, or can a team still survive and advance by leaning in on its starters?
You only really need 7 or 8. And void of foul trouble or another injury, NC State should be fine. Now, I'm going to say this because it's on my mind, and this is not something you're ever going to hear one of the coaches say, but when we get to the NCAA tournament, I've been in the tournament and around the game for 30-plus years, and I understand that we need to bring up young officials. But when I see an official who has never refereed an NC State game and is trying to referee in the post with Elisa Cunane, that's frustrating to me. I have been saying this for years, all the way back to when Brittany Griner was at Baylor, that if you've never refereed big girls, not the guards, it's the bigs. If you've not seen them and you've not refereed them, you come in this environment and you're going to call an NC State game and you haven't called them before. I don't care how young or how much experience we're trying to get them. If you haven't seen them, it's not fair. It's not fair to the players. So I'm going to put that out there because I do feel strongly about that, and I don't think that's fair. If you're a West Coast official and you've never refereed an ACC game and you're going to try to referee in the post, that's a problem. Now, when we get to this level, the Sweet 16, hopefully the officials that will be on the games, it's not something that coaches talk about publicly. It's not something they look at, but trust me, you can lose a lot of sleep if you're a coach knowing who the referees are the next game, especially if you don't know who they are. Now, if you know who they are and you've been around them, it's much more comforting because there's a trust factor and a respect factor there. I'm just going to say that right now because that was on my mind in the South Florida game, watching Elisa Cunane get the crap beat out of her. All right, so I'm just going to say that. Indiana. Mackenzie Holmes is a legitimate low-post scoring threat. She will put pressure on NC State's front row defensively. Now, we need Elisa to play smart and to be tough, but to stay out of foul trouble. The guards for Indiana are older. Grace Berger is one of the best mid-range pull-up jump shooting guards off the bounce. Allie Patberg is drawing Social Security. She's been on the college basketball court for so long. She's a 6th-year player, and she has an opportunity for a 7th because everybody gets their year back. And I say that all joking because she is tremendous, and I love her. She's a great player. I've had Indiana this year. They're an older team. They're a veteran team. They're very similar to NC State in terms of how they play and the experience factor. And I had Indiana. This is just a little sidebar. Like, I had Indiana earlier in the year against Maryland, and it was a big Monday, big stage, first opportunity for Indiana's program to be showcased in that light. And they didn't appear ready for it at the beginning of the game. And Maryland just, like a cannon, they were gone and the game was over. And you could just see that they weren't ready. Big Monday is a big deal on ESPN on the women's game. And since then, they've only lost twice. That was in the beginning of January. This is a very good team, very well put together team. Not highly explosive or athletic, not overly athletic. We have positions and matchups on the floor that we, meaning NC State, should win, but it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to probably come down to the last couple of possessions. It's probably the closest matchup that we have in the Sweet 16.
Well, I mean, if there's any indicator, Vegas has Indiana as a 1.5 point favorite, and you kind of raise your eyebrow looking at NC State as the 1 seed. I know probably that has something to do with Kayla Jones' availability. I know she's questionable, so I know we're talking about Kayla Jones not playing. There's still a possibility that she could play, but obviously she is in some amount of pain with that patella tendon injury. I want to ask you, Debbie, since you've watched Indiana basketball this year, I personally have not been able to see them too much, but you look at the final scores for these first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. They held VCU to 32 points, Belmont to 48. I know on the NCAA stats site, they're just outside the top 50 in scoring defense, averaging just in the mid-50s per game. Are they a defensively elite team, or is that just kind of a matter of coincidence that they've held teams to that low scoring in the first 2 rounds?
I don't think elite would be the word that I would use. I would say very much scout-driven, very connected, great understanding, very similar to NC State in that they do a lot of cover underneath and they rebound really well. Their ball screen defense is not an aggressive trapping ball screen defense. Their defense is not up the line. It might be on the line, but it's not this aggressive, turn you over sort of style. It's very much like NC State's. Very solid, very personnel driven, scout driven, very much ball control offense that allows them to set their defense. They're very well coached. Terry Morin has been around for a long time. She is well respected in our game, and she's done a fantastic job with an older group. Now, this was a group last year that very much like NC State was a team that could have made a deep run because of their personnel, and they have everybody back just like NC State. And that's why I'm surprised that it's -1.5, and I'll be anxious to see if that line changes by the time we get to Saturday. But that's a really interesting line right now, and I think we're in for a heck of a game. It is going to be a battle, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm not calling that one, unfortunately. I'm not on the call for that one. Maybe I'll get the next one, but I have my 2 games that day are, and see, I don't even know. Let's see, Michigan and Baylor is Saturday, 3:00 on ABC. Right before NC State plays, and then I have the Arizona-Texas A&M game at 8:00 after NC State plays. So hopefully I'll be in a good state of mind when the game's complete. But I'll have to watch from the stands with a very stoic presence, and I don't mind. I think everyone knows at this point, that. It's not a common occurrence for NC State to get this far all the time. So, of course, all the alumni, all of the NC State former players, I don't know if you know that, the former players put together a video and sent it to the team before they left for San Antonio, and it was so well done and very well received by the team. And I will mention just a little sidebar for you, Justin. Most of the NC State fans will remember Ashley Williams. Ashley was a walk-on from Cary, North Carolina, and I'm from Cary. Ashley walked on. She's an engineering graduate. By the time she graduated, she was on full scholarship and she was a starter. And I think she was one of NC State's favorite players because of her path. Even my own mother says that that's her favorite player, and I think that includes me. So Ashley's an assistant coach for Indiana, and she's on the other side of the bench, and I know this will be a challenging day for her as well.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because Wes Moore was asked about it in his availability Thursday. He kind of joked that maybe they'll have to switch up the hand signals a little bit, or do just have a little bit different language out there, knowing that Ashley's on the opposing sideline and knowing how she was recently played under Coach Moore. But definitely an interesting storyline there. I definitely have a bone to pick by Debbie Antonelli, the great Debbie Antonelli, not being on the call for the Wolfpack in the Sweet 16, but maybe we can change that if there's an Elite Eight appearance on Monday. I guess the silver lining there is that you'll be, firsthand watching Texas A&M, Arizona doing a little bit of scouting for a potential Elite Eight matchup.
Yeah.
Of course, that's if the knock on wood underdogs win on Saturday with the Wolfpack. It's still crazy to me that they're the underdogs. I guess it's
you know what, Justin, that is really interesting. Like, I'm wondering if the history of the Sweet 16, if the 1 seed has not been favored in a Sweet 16 matchup, that would be really interesting via Vegas terms.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm feeling like that never happens.
Yeah, and what surprised me is I saw Indiana. This is their first Sweet 16 appearance in program history. You think Indiana basketball? You're like, of course they've been in the Sweet 16. NC State's been to several. This is their first time there, so maybe. Yeah. How does that typically play in your experience when teams make their first Sweet 16 appearance? It changes a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to my comment before about Big Monday and the big moment. They, had never experienced that before, and it took them some time to adjust. And I think they've learned from it. It's helped them. That's really interesting because it just speaks to what I know I've been saying all year about Kayla Jones and what her value is to NC State, that she's the best hybrid 4 in the country. I've talked about this before, and everybody knows what a stretch 4 is. They pick and pop, stretch 4, shoot the 3, stretch the defense. Kayla is much more than that to NC State. She's a hybrid, and I call her that because not many 4s can do what she can do. Jada Boyd at the 4 has a different skill set than what Kayla has at the 4. And they're both important and different. But Kayla, can make decisions on the top of the floor with the ball in her hands. She can, play in another ball screen action. Jada doesn't need a screen. Jada is so explosive, she can score on a closeout on anybody, and that's different. And that changes some space sometimes around the floor. That's all positive. But to not be picked as a 1 seed and to be the underdog in the Sweet 16 is an unusual sounding thing for me. And I hope that, I know Wes is not going to have time to listen to this podcast, but that's an interesting piece of information. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, I know for one thing is for sure that this Wolfpack team does not mind playing the underdog role. That's the role they played when they went down to Columbia back in December and beat Don Staley and the Gamecocks. With their first top-seeded win, they did the same going up to Louisville, beating another number 1 ranked team. And guess what? The other 3 teams in history that have beaten 2 number 1 opponents in the women's college basketball game, they've done pretty well. They've gotten to the national championship each time. Mm-hmm. 2 of them won the whole thing. So I don't think, Wes Moore, he kind of joked that maybe he would have rather had the 2 seed just so that they'd continue to have that chip on their shoulder. Well, maybe he can show the team who the underdog is in this game, and that'll fire him up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sure that's going to be passed along at some point, that he'll be well aware of it. And use it as fuel for his team.
So quickly previewing a potential Elite Eight. I know, we have to see the action unfold on Saturday. Maybe the underdog wins, but presuming NC State, again, the number 1
Mm-hmm.
seed does win, and it's chalk, and either NC State gets Texas A&M, the 2 seed, or Arizona to the 3 seed. Who do you think is a better matchup for NC State, and what would be the biggest concerns with each of those matchups for the Wolfpack, assuming they meet in the Elite Eight on Monday?
Arizona is known as a very scrappy, fast defensive team. They press, they run and jump. They are up the line. They are overplaying. They are generating a lot of offense from their defense. They have an All-American on their team, Arie Mcdonald, a lefty, quick. You dribble the ball near her, she's going to take it. She's going to take dribble the ball near her, she's going to take it. She's one of the top defenders in our country on the women's side. They're a very balanced team, but they're very much known for their defense. Texas A&M has incredible balance. Like, starters 1 through 5 shoot between 12 and 8 field goal attempts, which you don't usually see that in the women's game. You don't see that kind of balance. You usually see 1 person or 2 players that dominate the field goal attempts. They're very similar to NC State, very well coached, prepared. Gary Blair and Wes Moore are buddies. They've been friends for 100 years. They both are golfing buddies. They're both great sandbagging, trash talking kind of guys that are from Texas and love being from Texas. That would be an interesting matchup, either one of those. That Texas A&M has good size inside, very matchup zone, very good defensively, shrink the game, short possessions, where Arizona's trying to speed it up. If NC State can get past Indiana, both of those teams would present challenges, but would be really fun to prepare for, because now you're talking about getting a chance to go to the Final Four, where NC State's only been one time, and that was in '98. So that could be a conversation for the next time. If they win, Justin, you can call me back. We'll have another conversation about it.
Sounds good to me. Well, we will see. Thank you again, Debbie, for joining, being generous with your time as always. And I'd hate to get through this podcast without mentioning the strong play of Kai Crutchfield, who's 6 of 7 for 3 in the first 2 rounds. Jakia Brown-Turner has flipped a switch in the NCAA tournament. She had a team-high 19 points, 2 of 4 from 3 in the last round. And Reina Perez has just been her typical self, solid, steady, getting assists and not turning the ball over.
You're so right. I mean, sometimes I get stuck in the weeds of the detail of the game. Like, I'm already way inside, how they're going to win and what's going to happen in the last couple of possessions and how, based on ball screen defense and all the tweaks and changes. But the overriding issue is this. Jakia Brown-Turner is going to be an All-American before she graduates from NC State. She's the real deal. She's a terrific perimeter defender. She and Kai Crutchfield are the 2 best. There's no doubt in my mind. Kai is a remarkable person. She's the 5th option on offense, and she's a senior with an incredible sense of urgency and has played like it since about the middle of February. You could see her trending in the right direction. She had a struggle where she was dipping with her shooting and all that, but she was doing other things. It's so important to be able to add value without the ball in your hands when you have a high-powered offense like NC State has. And as we mentioned, Reina Perez, Jada Boyd, all the players that we've talked about, and especially Elisa Cunane. Cunane's got to stay tough. She's got to stay out of foul trouble. When she plays the game low to high, meaning she doesn't stand up, she plays the game low. She's down with her hips over her heels. Her knees are bent, and she's aggressive with a big target, wide base. Nobody's going to stop her in a one-on-one. If she keeps doing that and continues to play tough, NC State's going to be fine.
And as you mentioned, referees that know how to officiate her game, because there's a reason she led the ACC in free throw makes this year, because she is elite at getting to the line. And, South Florida's bigs did both foul out of that game. Maybe they should have a little bit earlier.
I think all 3 of them did. I think she fouled out 3 players on the front line, but there was a lot of physical play taking place before they even got to that, and by design. I mean, Jose Fernandez, you're right about South Florida. They were underseeded. I've had them in my top 20 all year, and they've been as high as in the top 15. So that's an excellent basketball team. That is a huge win for NC State, because that's a team that runs a lot of stuff, and they're very good on the offensive end. And that matchup inside mattered, and they knew it. They had to try to take Cunane out, which is what everybody tries to do. The problem for Indiana is that they don't have a lot of depth up front to try to do that. So I can see if Cunane doesn't foul and Mackenzie Holmes doesn't foul, we're going to have a heck of a ball game down the end into the late stages of the 4th quarter.
Well, Debbie, we don't want to hold you up anymore. We know you're a very busy woman down there in San Antonio, so good luck. Enjoy your peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Wolfpack fans, be sure to tune in Saturday at 6 p.m. on ESPN2. Catch NC State playing Indiana in their 3rd straight Sweet 16 appearance, in search of their 2nd ever Elite 8 appearance. We will see. We will have Debbie back on. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the Underdogs win. Please be sure to follow us on Twitter. You can follow our main account at the Wolfpacker. You can follow Debbie at Debbie Antonelli on Twitter. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will. Give us a like on Facebook, NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. And remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Plus, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch this video, and please give this video a thumbs up while you're at it. So again, thank you very much, Debbie. For Debbie Antonelli, this is Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.